This morning, 48 hours away from early voting in Texas, what registrations and mail-in ballots might tell us about the turnout we'll soon see. Governor Abbott shifting responsibility back to county judges, letting them decide when to reopen bars. Dallas's Clay Jenkins is with us on why he won't do it. A new poll shows Trump leading Biden in Texas, but the race remains within the margin of error. Ross Ramsey on what to expect in our state in those remaining 3 weeks. And what do those new numbers mean for the GOP in Texas? And will we see any more presidential debates? We'll ask the Travis County GOP chair, Matt Kovaciak. And the scandals surrounding Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Former State Senator Connie Burton on the effects that Paxton could have on other Republican candidates running this fall.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to you. A reminder, early voting in Texas begins on Tuesday, 48 hours away. We're going to leave that reminder on the bottom of your screen there as we begin with some of the top political headlines all across our state. Expect to see more of Joe Biden in these remaining 23 days before the election, on TV at least. Biden's campaign is spending $5 million to buy ads in Texas over the remaining 3 weeks. The Lincoln Project, an anti-Trump group, also spent $1 million on ads last week. You might have seen them. These are targeting Latinos and suburban voters, and both groups say they think Republicans remain vulnerable in Texas. Texas Democrats are going into the final weeks here with momentum, and money is one measure of it. Democratic candidates outraised at least 10 Republicans in Texas House of Representative races. The GOP still has more money on hand, the Texas Tribune reports. But the dollar signs suggest it could really be competitive next month as Democrats try to win majority control of the state house. And Ted Cruz and Mark Cuban got into it on Twitter the other day. The senator tweeted that he would not be watching the NBA Finals after the league took a political stance with Black Lives Matter. Well, Cuban, who owns the Dallas Mavs, shot back at Cruz on Twitter, and this is a quote. Cuban saying a U.S. senator with 3 NBA teams in his state, employing thousands of people, and he is rooting for their businesses to do poorly. Cuban said, "This is who you are, Ted Cruz." Let's begin, though, this morning with the ongoing pandemic. Governor Abbott took responsibility away from county judges on whether Texas bars can reopen. Now the governor is giving that responsibility back. Each county judge can decide whether it is time to reopen the watering holes in their part of the state. In Dallas, at least, Clay Jenkins said it is not yet time. He's with us right now to explain that. Judge, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you today.
Thanks for being here. I see the updates every day from the county, and the numbers have fallen to a couple of hundred new cases a day. Why isn't it time to reopen bars? Because the cases appear to be falling, or at least trending down.
Well, unfortunately, they're not trending down, Jason. They were in September, but about the time the governor increased occupancy levels, our hospitals began to see more admissions, more ED visits for COVID. We now have a 40% increase in hospitalizations since September 27, and a 20% increase since that time in the average number of daily COVID cases. So the doctors have said unanimously it's just not the time to open bars.
Well, let's talk about that, because you said you made your piece early on to follow the science. What is the threshold for reopening bars? Is it the daily positivity rate, the number of admissions to emergency rooms, or what?
The doctors look at a suite of different metrics, and they meet every Tuesday on that. We're currently at orange. We can begin to look at opening bars when we're in colors like yellow and green. We'll get more clarity from the doctors after they meet this week, but they have said for months, don't open bars in red or orange. We're in orange, and we're moving up in the wrong direction in our numbers, back towards red, unfortunately.
So it's a weekly decision then is when it's reconsidered. I want to ask you about Governor Abbott. He was adamant that he would decide when bars and other businesses reopen in Texas. Why do you think he shifted responsibility back to county judges just before the election?
Well, I think he's trying to put a political answer to a public health question. And you always need to listen to the science and give scientific answers to public health questions. I don't know what his thought process was. Ideally, we would have a regional approach and bars would not open here in the Metroplex. President Trump's CDC and Dr. Birx have said don't open bars in college towns, and that would describe all four counties, all four of the big counties.
Yeah, no doubt. Early voting, it begins in 48 hours here on Tuesday. For people who want to go to a voting center and vote in person all across the state, what kind of precautions should they expect, at least in Dallas County?
Here's the key things. It is going to be safe for you to vote. We've now done this twice during the COVID pandemic, and we're going to do it again. We've got plexiglass screens, disinfectants, everybody's wearing a mask. Everything you touch is going to be disinfected between each person. So the key things for you to do is bring your mask and go, before you go vote early, please go to dallascountyvotes.org and you will be able to look at a map there of what polling places are green, so short lines, yellow, longer lines, or red, real long lines that you'd probably want to avoid. And so within just a short distance from one another, you'll probably be able to find a green one that'll get you in and out quickly.
In the final moments here, I want to ask about, it's a political program, Judge, but I want to ask about Halloween because it's affected by the pandemic. You told us the other day that you wouldn't recommend families taking their children out trick-or-treating. It's outside, Judge. Everyone's wearing a mask usually. Why not?
Oh, I tell you, this is a tough one for me. I really hated being the Grinch that stole Halloween. The doctors had to really push on me to do this, but they pointed out that even in the flu pandemic of 1918, the president at that time told people not to trick or treat. When you're talking about hundreds of people coming to the front door and everybody dipping their hand into the same, bucket, everybody breathing heavily, running from house to house. We just can't afford our kids to get sick and take that back into the schools. We can't afford that. Could be a super spreader event. So think of it like Easter and do that candy hunt at home. Think of ways to celebrate that fun holiday, but celebrate it with the people you're around all the time, your family.
All right, Judge Clay Jenkins from Dallas County, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's refocus for a moment and look at the two biggest races you'll see on your ballot when early voting begins Tuesday. A new poll shows that Donald Trump leads Joe Biden in Texas. Trump with 50% of the vote, Biden with 45%, but the race remains within the margin of error. In the U.S. Senate race, incumbent John Cornyn has an 8-point lead over MJ Hagar. He is at 50%, she's at 42%. This survey, done and released by the UT Politics Project and the Texas Tribune. So for perspective on this, let's turn to Ross Ramsey of the Texas Tribune, the co-founder and executive editor. He commissioned the poll. Ross is in Austin. Ross, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well. Weren't a lot of surprises on those two numbers. What's your biggest takeaway from them?
The gender gap on the presidential race is huge. Trump is winning with men by 16 points. Biden is winning with women by 5 points. If you go down to the next race, Cornyn's winning men by 8 points and is winning women by 4 points. So, women are really running away from the president in this thing. And I think that's one of the differences between the numbers in that race and the numbers in the Senate race.
I wanted to ask you also about the turnout, because the top of the ticket, the top of the elections always usually drive turnout. But you think that the down ballot races might drive turnout next month?
I think so. I think, some of these down ballot races are getting incredible amounts of money, and national Democrats and Republicans are playing in state house races because redistricting is up next year. That money is presumably used in some ways to drive voters to the polls. I think both parties are trying to do it from the bottom up as well as from the top down.
Yeah, clock is ticking as well. Ross, thanks. Back to you in a moment. Coming up, we'll get a Republicans' take on those poll numbers we discussed with Ross and find out what the GOP can do in the next 3 weeks. Travis County's Republican Chairman Matt Kovaciak with us in a moment. And Texas Republicans might have another problem, the political allegations against Ken Paxton. They could pull down other GOP candidates. That's part of what former State Senator Connie Burton told us in her podcast, and we'll let you hear how she explained it when Inside Texas Politics returns. Those new poll results we told you about before the break reinforce what Republicans already know. It could be a close race in Texas next month. And what might all that mean for down ballot candidates? With us right now is Matt Kovaciak. He is the Travis County Republican Party chairman. Matt, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask you about the Texas Tribune poll. It showed Biden behind Trump. Trump had a 5-point lead, still within the margin of error. It looks like it could be close. Do you expect the 2020 race to be closer in Texas than it was in 2016 when Trump was ahead by 8?
I do. I think Trump won by 9 in 2016. Of course, at the top of the ticket in 2018, Ted Cruz won by 2.6%. Look, the Trump margin in 2020 is going to be in the middle. I've been saying for 6 months, I think Trump's going to win Texas by 5 to 7%. If it's at that 5 level or above, that's what's key, because that gives Republicans a chance to hold, most of the 6 or 7 congressional seats that are in play. Gives them a chance to hold the majority in the Texas House. If it goes down to that 2 or 3% range where Cruz was, that's where you lose seats and you could lose the House majority. So I do believe that Trump's going to win Texas by a good margin. It's not going to be as large, I don't think, as it was in 2016, but it's going to be large enough that Republicans have a chance to do well enough down ballot where they can feel like they got through a tough election cycle.
And Matt, on election night itself, how long do you think it might be before Texans will find out who won the race? Will they know election night or the day after, do you think?
Yeah, if you mean on a statewide basis, then yes, I believe we'll know on election night within a couple hours, perhaps even when early voting comes in at 7 o'clock, depending on what the margin looks like. I think, on the statewide level, you have the presidential race, you have the U.S. Senate race. I believe Cornyn will win by a larger margin than Trump does. I think he will overperform Trump. In that same UT poll you cite, Cornyn was up 8. And that tracks with the numbers that I've seen privately as well. And then you have the Railroad Commission race and a couple Supreme Court races. So I do think on a statewide basis, we'll know who's won those races by 8 or 9 o'clock, probably Central Time. I think in some of the congressional races and some of the really close state house races, some of those may go on a while. They may get to provisional ballots and overseas military and absentee and all of those kinds of things, and even election challenges. There are going to be some very, very, very close races down ballot all across the state, but particularly in and around Dallas and in and around Houston.
I want to ask you briefly, too, about the presidential debates. The Commission on Presidential Debates decided the next debate on Thursday in Miami would be virtual because of the president's infection. Joe Biden says he'll be there. Trump says it's a waste of time. Do you think we're going to see any more debates between these two?
I do. I'm not convinced we're going to see the second one as it was supposed to be held in person. I think that'll probably get worked out very, very soon. Obviously, these are huge events that have global security implications, and there's a lot that goes into them. You can't just pull them together in one day. So probably by Monday, we'll know for sure whether the second debate is happening on the day it was supposed to happen in the place it was supposed to happen, and whether it will be in person. The president has said he's not going to debate virtually. And so the question is what happens then to the third debate if the second debate gets canceled. I think the second debate may get held. The president's going to need to take a COVID test and show a negative result, perhaps a couple of them. Yeah. And I think he wants to be in that position to do it. All
right, Matt Kovaciak, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Now to the political scandal around Ken Paxton. Can he survive politically after his own inner circle accused him of bribery and of abuse of office? Paxton denies it, and he's not on the ballot next month, but Republicans worry that the Paxton revelation, they worry that it could hurt the rest of the party in November. Former State Senator Connie Burton runs the Texan News website now, and she joined me and Jason Wheeler on our Y'all-Ticks political podcast this week.
It's been moving fast, but you spent time as a state senator in Austin. What do you think he should do?
I guess that's not, I don't think that's really for me to say, because I don't know exactly what's going on here. I don't think, obviously.
I've never known you not to have an opinion, though, Connie. I've never known you not to have a thought on something.
Jason, you got me there, right? Again, I think if he wants he put out another statement after Congressman Roy did and said he's not going to resign. So I don't think it really matters what I think he should or shouldn't do. He said he's not. So he's staying there. He's not going to resign. And I guess we're going to have these investigations into both the individuals within his office and on him as well.
Let me focus the question just a little bit more, though. We've got an election coming up, a very important election. We've got some very tight races across Texas. You've got the control of the House up for grabs this time around, essentially. Would it be best for the party if he resigned at this point? Because Ken Paxton's been around for some years now. He's got good friends. There are plenty of people Democrats could tie him to in this state. And if that's a potentially close race, that could help decide that race. Would it be best for the party with all that's going on, for someone to step aside and deal with their legal problems?
Well, as somebody that has run a race, won a race, been in the Senate, everything is, as you all know, can affect your particular race, unfortunately, right? So, these kinds of things do have, can weigh on other races. You're correct in that. And I'm sure those that are on the ballot right now are very worried about this because, again, even though they had nothing to do with this particular situation going on in the Attorney General's office, he is a Republican elected official, and they're going to worry about how this is going to affect their particular race. Again, I'm just not going to say, it's not up to me to decide for the Attorney General what he should and shouldn't do. And clearly he stated he's staying in, he's not resigning. So I will tell you that I know that there will be a lot of Republicans on the ballot that are very worried about this because, as I mentioned, whether it should or shouldn't, it's going to affect them at the ballot box. I don't see this as a Democratic, politically motivated thing. And that's why I'm very concerned, as most everybody should be, because somewhere among all of these statements, there's truth. And that's what we need to get to, right? Figure this out.
And whether you're Democrat or Republican or none of the above or all of the above, this really doesn't it undermine, I guess, people's faith in government? Because you've got, the Attorney General's office is a very powerful office in this state. And if you have people within the office, not just pointing the finger at one person, but fingers pointing in all directions, these are people that, hold some very powerful positions in this state. And they're saying some pretty bad stuff about one another here. Don't you think it undermines people's confidence in government?
It does, although I don't know if people's confidence in government can become, be any lower than it is, frankly.
Touche. True.
Connie Burton had a lot more to say. In fact, we have a second episode as well that we released over the past few days. It's with Dan Rather. You can listen to both episodes if you get your phone out. You can aim its camera right here on the right-hand side of your screen at the QR code. It will open a window on your device and take you directly to Yolitics, where you can find the Connie Burton episode, the Dan Rather episode, and many more. We drop new, unique episodes every Tuesday as well. The Paxton mess, though, is likely to create political fallout, as Connie Burton mentioned just a moment ago. Republicans, Democrats, politicos, and journalists all asking questions. We'll pose some of those next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross is back. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe has this week off. Ross, we'll start with you and Ken Paxton's political future. We saw John Cornyn just the other day as the latest to come out and not really offer any words of support for the Attorney General. Can he survive this politically?
I don't know. He's been indicted on another charge for more than 5 years, and people have stuck with him. This time people are jumping. A number of politicians have returned money that was contributed to them by the guy who's in the private sector guy who's in this scandal with Paxton. Cornyn pulled off yesterday. The rats are leaving the ship.
Indeed so. But Bud, Paxton says he's done nothing wrong. This is something the other guys have done who have accused him, and he's not going anywhere, is what Paxton says.
Well, they're running from him for a couple of reasons. First of all, the 2022 race is going to be close. Nobody wants to be tied to somebody who's in any sort of legal trouble. And second, the Republicans generally would like to, cut him loose and put somebody else in that office. There's a real frustration among Republicans down the ballot that the governor and the attorney general and lieutenant governor are camping in offices. There's not much more time for Republicans to win statewide. They'd like some chances.
Ross, let me ask you, Connie Burton, the former state senator from Fort Worth, told us a few moments ago here on the program that the Paxton news and scandal could affect down ballot candidates, Republicans who are down ballot. We talked about that, you and I did a moment ago. Do you think that might be the case, that people might shy away from them?
I think they might shy away from him. He's not on the ballot this year, and he hasn't been particularly involved in campaigns. So I think the results will be limited But, you know, if you're in a race where Paxton comes up, I think you'll see candidates making some distance.
And the
Jason, you have to point out that he is the chairman of Lawyers for Trump, so there is an effect in the campaign.
Well, what is his end game, though? What is Paxton's end game, Bud?
If he wants to camp in there and stay, I mean, you know, eventually the House would have to pass a majority vote to consider an impeachment resolution, go to the Senate. That'd be take a 2/3 vote in the Senate. I think he knows that politically he wouldn't be impeached, so he'll stay as long as he wants.
And this could drag on for a while. Bud, I want to ask you, too, about early voting. Obviously begins in 48 hours across Texas. Any indication on turnout, what we might see when you look back and compare that to the number of mail-in ballots that were applied for?
You know, it's interesting to see the tremendous mail-in ballot response in particularly Tarrant County, where both the Democrats and the Republicans are in some heated swing House seats. You know, 28,000 mail-in ballots have already been cast. 2.5% of the votes already in. And Bexar County, a real heavy turnout. So it's interesting to see a lot of mail-in ballots in these really close races, close counties. The thing people to know, first of all, you can't take your smartphone. No, notes have to be on paper, so you can't take your phone. Be prepared to wait a long time. You can vote anywhere, so pick some obscure little location that a lot of people won't go to. And my tip is go during the football game. The line will be short.
That's a good point. Final word here from you, Ross, on what we might see as far as turnout for early voting.
I think it's hard to tell. This is going to be a high turnout election in every kind of voting, and I think you would expect mail balloting to be up, early voting to be up, election day voting to be up. So we'll see.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday with another episode here of Inside Texas Politics. Hope you can join us then, and don't forget to go vote.